He didn't feel any pain in his chest. That was the problem. James Whittaker was 41 years old, a high school basketball coach, 6'3", 190 pounds. He'd passed his annual physical 4 months ago with a resting heart rate of 62 and blood pressure of 118/76. He was, by every measurable standard, healthy. The boxer named Remy had been acting strange for 2 days. It started on a Wednesday. James was sitting on the couch after practice, his 11-month-old son Declan asleep in the playpen. Remy walked over, sat down, and pressed her forehead against James's left arm. Not a nudge, not a bump. She pressed and held, her skull flat against his bicep, and stayed there. James scratched her ear and moved his arm. Remy repositioned and pressed again. Same arm, same spot. She stayed for 4 minutes until Declan woke up. On Thursday, it happened again. James was standing at the kitchen counter making bottles, when Remy walked up behind him, rose on her hind legs, and placed both paws on his left shoulder. She pressed her nose against the base of his neck, behind his ear, and inhaled. His wife, Monica, was a veterinary technician. She watched from the doorway. That's not normal. She's being clingy. That's not clingy. That's targeted. She's fixating on your left side. He felt fine. He had no symptoms. No shortness of breath, no fatigue beyond the usual end-of-season coaching exhaustion, no nausea. Friday morning, Remy refused to let James pick up Declan. James reached into the playpen. Remy pushed herself between his arms and the baby, her body a 62-pound wedge. She wasn't growling. She wasn't showing teeth. She was simply occupying the space between father and son with absolute physical certainty. Monica pulled Remy back. James lifted Declan. Remy circled them both, then sat down and pressed her head against James's left arm again. Monica was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I want you to see a doctor. And I've worked with animals long enough to listen." James went to the walk-in clinic that afternoon because Monica asked him to, not because he believed anything was wrong. He told the doctor his dog had been pressing against his left arm and wouldn't stop. The doctor listened politely, checked his vitals, and ordered a routine EKG as a precaution. The EKG showed ST segment elevation in leads 2, 3, and a VF. The doctor looked at the printout for 6 seconds, then walked James directly to a wheelchair. James was in the cardiac catheterization lab within 90 minutes. The interventional cardiologist found a 92% blockage in the right coronary artery, a widowmaker configuration, the kind that produces sudden cardiac death without warning in men under 50. "You're having what we call a silent MI," the cardiologist explained while prepping the stent. "No chest pain. No classic symptoms. Your heart has been losing blood supply for approximately 48 to 72 hours. Most men with this presentation don't come to the hospital. They collapse. If you stay for stories about the ones who detect what no test catches, subscribe. You're in the right place. James was in the hospital for 3 days. The stent opened the artery. His troponin levels confirmed active cardiac muscle damage that had been progressing for days, exactly the time frame Remy had started pressing against his arm. Monica visited with Declan each afternoon. On the third visit, she brought the dog. Remy walked into the room, jumped onto the bed, something she had never been allowed to do, and pressed her nose against James's left arm. She sniffed for 12 seconds. Then she lay down beside him and put her chin on his thigh. She didn't press. She didn't fixate. She lay still. "She knows," Monica said. "Has your dog ever fixated on a specific part of your body and you didn't understand why? Tell us in the comments. Your story could save someone's life." The cardiologist later told James that cardiac tissue under ischemic stress releases volatile organic compounds through the skin, changes in aldehyde and hydrocarbon concentrations that are imperceptible to human senses. Dogs can detect these shifts at concentrations measured in parts per trillion. Remy hadn't been clingy. She had been performing a diagnostic assessment with more sensitivity than the equipment in his doctor's office. Every guardian who refuses to be ignored deserves to be believed. If stories like this stay with you, subscribe. You won't miss the next one. James returned to coaching 2 weeks later. He wore a heart rate monitor during practices. He took his medication on schedule. He did everything the cardiologist told him to do. But the thing he trusted most wasn't the monitor or the medication. It was Remy. Lying on the gym floor during practice, her chin on her paws, her eyes on James. If she pressed again, he'd listen. He'd already learned what happened when he didn't. The cardiac rehabilitation nurse who managed James's recovery told him that silent myocardial infarctions account for approximately 45% of all heart attacks in men. Under 50, no chest pain, no arm numbness, no Hollywood clutch and collapse. The heart muscle dies quietly, the electrical conduction system degrades incrementally, and the body compensates until it can't. Most men with your presentation don't go to the doctor, the nurse said. They go to the gym. They push through the fatigue. They assume it's stress, or poor sleep, or getting older. And then they collapse. James had gone to the doctor because a 62-pound boxer wouldn't stop pressing her head against his left arm. The research Monica pulled from the veterinary cardiology literature was unambiguous. Canine olfactory detection of cardiac ischemia has been documented in peer-reviewed studies since 2015. Dogs can detect changes in the volatile organic compound profile of human skin, specifically elevated levels of isoprene, acetone, and pentane, that correlate with myocardial oxygen deprivation. These compounds are released through sweat glands and exhaled breath at concentrations measured in parts per trillion. Remy had detected the shift 48 to 72 hours before the EKG caught the electrical damage. Her targeting of James's left arm was consistent with the anatomical distribution of sweat glands in the axillary region, the area closest to the heart's surface, where VOC concentrations would be highest. She wasn't pressing randomly, Monica explained to James on his second night in the hospital. She was going to the source, the strongest signal, the spot where your body was leaking the most evidence. He thought about the 3 days he had spent pushing the dog away, laughing at her clinginess, interpreting 62 pounds of diagnostic precision as neediness. He thought about the moment Remy had refused to let him pick up Declan. She had placed her body between father and son, not to keep them apart, but to keep James from exerting himself. Because exertion on a heart with 92% blockage is the trigger. The physical strain of lifting, carrying, bending, the actions that increase oxygen demand on a muscle already starving for blood. She had been performing what Monica later called load management, reducing his physical activity by any means available to a dog without words. The cardiologist cleared James for normal activity 6 weeks after the stent placement. He returned to coaching. He wore the heart rate monitor. He took his medications. But the thing he checked first every morning wasn't the monitor or the pill organizer. It was Remy. If she pressed, he'd call the doctor. If she didn't press, he'd lace up his shoes and head to practice. 62 pounds of certainty. More reliable than any alarm he owned.